I'm Damian Barrett and welcome to Access All Areas. Second versus third yesterday, and what a terrific performance by West Coast, knocking over the Magpies at the MCG. Welcome, Matthew Lloyd and Jimmy Bartel.
Thanks, Damo. For me, Lloydie, I think we're seeing already the effects of the new Optus Stadium for the Eagles now coming over the MCG. Similar size to, it's almost in between the MCG and the ground here at Etihad, that they're getting used to playing on that style of ground and finding the space. And I look at the stat, 117 marks, and it's the first time I've seen the Eagles at the MCG find that link between the arcs, and that was led by young Waterman, who took 7 marks, which allows Kennedy to stay at home a bit more.
Yeah, Dano, we'll talk about Nick Naitanui very shortly, but he goes down. You thought, how are they going to respond to this? But they just absolutely smashed them. So we'll tell you a little bit Nick Naitanui's injury now, and he went down. Obviously, they responded. Scott Lysett did a great job on Brodie Grundy. This is devastating, though. I just thought, as Jim said, they dominated the airwaves, but with this man going down, obviously time will tell to see whether they can go on and win a premiership without him, because Lysett's going well, but he's
answer that question now, Lord. That's what we do on the run. Can they win the premiership without him?
It's such an even year. I'll still say they can. They can.
Are you of that same view too?
Yeah, because Scott Lysett's not your second ruckman. He's actually a number one ruck playing second fiddle to Nick Nat. So he's still a quality centre bounce. And they obviously you lose what Nick Nat brings in the follow-up, but Lysett's still got good tap work.
As you touched on, got some really big names back, Kennedy and Darling and Lecras as well. What's those 3 games in a row, didn't they? Swans, Bombers and Crows have got it back together against GWS and then against Collingwood. They did it also too with the interceptors, the markers down back, Hearn and McGovern.
11 intercept marks between them, and it's just the package here, and that's where Mason Cox going out before the game. Jerry McGovern, if he doesn't respect you, I don't think he would have respected too many of the Collingwood forwards in a good way. He just thought to himself, OK, I can zone off a fair bit. Hearn's had a great year. He'd been All-Australian half-back at the moment. McGovern, you saw he was on my check there, Jimmy. He just let him go. And I thought at both ends of the ground, they were just too good in the air for Collingwood. Yeah,
spot on. They were allowed to actually set up the way they wanted to. As you see, McGovern, he just took back position. He just watched the eyes of the kicker every single time. And Hearn's been doing this for so many years. And then he can hurt you on the rebound with that thumping kick he's got.
OK, we saw Cox last week go back at times to maybe, I suppose, counteract what Hearn and McGovern were doing yesterday. That was one excuse for Collingwood. Should they have acted, though, on other ways?
I just think now the weight of numbers. Lyndon Dunn out down at one end, Cox down at the other. They were just beaten by a better team, and the pressure of the West Coast Eagles was sensational as well. So they just become a fumbly side yesterday.
They'd wrapped the game up in the last quarter. They were pretty cruisy, pretty comfortable. So much so that the normally unassuming captain, Hearn, decided to do a fist pump in the crowd, Jimmy.
I like seeing that. A little bit relaxed, a bit of fan engagement. That's good fan engagement. We've seen some ordinary ones early in the year where fans are getting a little bit aggressive over the top. That's great. That's what we want to see. That's why our game is so good, that interaction with the players.
The numbers dropping, as you referred to, Lordo. Lyndon Dunn out for Collingwood now for the year. Darcy Moore came back on the back of one game in the VFL. He looked at home, I thought.
Oh, so much to work with here. I'm not sure what he's going to do over the off-season, but there's not many talents that come around like Darcy Moore. And I've been critical of Darcy, saying, what does he give? How consistent is he? He's always injured, but he's a talent, isn't he?
So, Lloyd, if he plays his next 100 games, is he playing it as a centre-half back or a centre-half forward?
I think that forwards are harder to find, and he can play that role, but I'd settle him down at centre-half back. He seems more comfortable there. Ben Reid, I know he's signed on for next year, Damo, but he can't get his body right.
No, he's
Lyndon Dunn's gone for 12 months, so I think back's his spot, and hopefully Cox can get back in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and they clearly wanted him to play in the back line, Jimmy, in the off-season. We know he's had the soft tissues again, which have kept him out until this point of the year. Great game yesterday, Etihad Stadium. Just a fantastic battle, North Melbourne and the Sydney Swans. This man here, we've seen him do it before, managed to kick his 900th auto. He's closing in on you, but this goal there, late in that piece, you can see the scores, and then followed it up basically in the next passage of play effectively with another one. He stood up when they needed him to.
He had a great duel with Robbie Tarrant, but look, we know with Buddy, he only needs a couple of kicks, he can turn the game on its head, but that was the thing. He and Rampy, the two more experienced players, they obviously lost Joey Kennedy early with back spasms, but they just keep finding young players who play their role and just step up at big moments. Luke Parker, talk about big moments, he stepped up as well, as we see here.
Smother.
Look at him launch himself across the pack. Absolute superstar.
Damo, massive win. Obviously, the Roos was 7 points up. I thought they were going to win this game, and it sets up their season. But the Swans found a way, and look at this pressure. The siren goes to relief. It was huge because they play the Suns at the SCG this week. So suddenly they can consolidate themselves in the top 4 when they might have been just fighting for a final spot if they lost that game.
Fantastic battle within the battle too, wasn't there? With Majak Dor and Alir on each other at various stages of the game. Both men have had troubled recent past when it comes to just finding niches in the footy. Majak Dor started the year off as a backman. He's now had 2 weeks in a row as a forward, Jimmy, and it's been really good cover for Ben Brown in the absence of Wood and Waite. And Alir, after a difficult 2017, is starting to put together a nice 2018.
Yeah, I think that's the best way, and you nailed it there, Damo. These two have struggled to find their spot in the 22. We obviously know their athletic gifts and they can play either end of the ground, but they probably just haven't found confidence in their own ability, but where they belong in the side. We saw Alir a couple of years ago when the Swans made that grand final push. He was very good at half back, but he's sort of been tried forward, and the ruck has settled him down back. He looks natural there. And Big Madge, I think the time back has given him confidence to play at this level.
They've gone to Ben Brown far too much, so maybe it's got to the point where Brad Scott said we need someone else down there. 4 goals too yesterday. He was brilliant. Did
it within the game last week, didn't he?
He did,
and he did it from the outset yesterday, and it's a weapon he's got up his sleeve. Port Adelaide, they could look back on yesterday, I reckon, at the end of the home and away season on how they lost to Fremantle, who was going okay under certain scenarios, but it's an opportunity loss for a top 4 perspective. Yeah,
you just can't drop those games. We saw Melbourne lose one to St Kilda a few weeks ago. It could cost them a top 4 spot, and you just felt the pressure of Freo was right up, but you still got to win those games. But they did lose some key players, and Robbie Gray was one of those players, and that was an ugly incident there with Ryan Nyhouse. That just, you look back on, he might say, I didn't know where the ball was, but it's a dumping tackle, one we hate in our game these days.
Jimmy, you sat on the match review last year. What would you have done if you were still in charge of that incident today?
Well, you can still tackle and bump, and I know people get frustrated with it, but your tackling and bumping always gets graded as careless. So then obviously impact comes into play. So if this was to get more than 2 weeks, so if that's careless, high, it equals 2 weeks.
Yes.
But if you want more than 2 weeks, you have to grade that as severe impact to throw it to the tribunal.
I would argue that is severe, and I reckon for the greater good of the game, that should be viewed as severe. Is that too harsh for me to say that?
No, not at all, because you can also elevate things, potential to cause more damage. So that's the decision the MRO has to have, and the people at the AFL. If you want it to be more than 2 weeks, you've got to elevate it to severe.
Yeah, OK. You both said that West Coast can win without Nat Nui, as in a premiership. Can Port win a premiership if Paddy Ryder stays on the sidelines with what appears to be an inductive problem out of yesterday?
I don't think so. I was concerned about them beforehand. I just think they're 2-1 pace through the midfield, Jim. But that was a bad loss yesterday. They just didn't have any spark at all.
Yeah, spot on. I don't think they can win without Paddy Ryder. The All-Australian ruckman, absolute star. But when he was missing early in the year, Port struggled. He came through. Port had their good patch. No coincidence there. It's Paddy Ryder. Because, as you said, the speed that they've got and what they're trying to do to get it on the outside, the only way they can do that is from Ryder winning hitouts.
If Freo had a gun key forward, they would have won that by 6 or 7 goals. So they were by far the superior side.
So do you reckon that game said more about Freo or more about Port?
Probably more about Port. You just got to go on the road and win those games. But Freo, I think what they've done is they've got a lot of kids in and they're having some shockers, but they're coming up and winning once a month, which is, they can win 7 or 8 games. It's a pretty good season.
They've got the 7 already, and will probably cause some drama between now and round 23. Great result for the GWS. Out of nowhere, in the past 6 weeks, they have got some real steel and bind about them. It's come possibly through the adversity they copped at the start of the year with injuries and getting some key players back. But beating Richmond the way they did has put that curveball result into the finals makeup.
We highlighted a few weeks ago with the Orange Tsunami, and it's back. That midfield power, Lockie Whitfield, he can play half-back, wing. Callum Ward just leads them superbly. Kelly, Shield, all those sort of midfield runners are now hitting top form, Lloydie.
Leon Cameron's been questioned by some people in the past, but you know what he said? He said over the weekend that he bought a kicking game to against Richmond. You can't handball too much. I heard him on 3AW with you yesterday, Jim, that we're going to kick more to not put ourselves under pressure, and they executed it really well over the weekend.
They benefited by Jason Castagna having a real shocker in front of goal. He was thereabouts, but 0-5 from the 5 shots he had at goal, and a couple of others that didn't even make it. But dropping a mark like that in a game that was decided as narrowly as it was, he only needs 1 or 2 of these moments you see here to go his way, and the Tigers probably win the game.
Yeah, we all have bad days, don't we, Lloydie, where it just doesn't go right. You see, look, even the ball won't come back up to him. The ball got lost in the lights before when he dropped the mark. He's got teammates yelling at him to pass it off, but he did have an opportunity late in the game when the scores are very close. A set shot, which he normally would nail, even that. This is Caddy here saying, well, I think Josh Caddy wants it all the time because he's in good touch, but the set shot, even this, it's like there's glad wrap on the goals for him up there at Spotless Stadium.
It is an issue though, Damo. I think he has got a high ball drop, not the best kicking technique.
Right.
Fell off it. So it's an area of his game he's got to get better at. He hurt them on the weekend. He wouldn't have slept too well Saturday night, but at least he's getting the ball.
It was about this time last year they hit go on their premiership launch, wasn't it? And just went nuts with team play. And we saw them win a final series of the 3 finals they played by an average of 9 goals. Jimmy, through this team style of football.
Well, this is what you notice when you play Richmond is they want to keep the ball alive and they'll keep taking risks. And most sides would take that out of bounds. You see Jack punch it back over his head. Josh Caddy here would normally rush the ball over, but he's actually, watch this, off the side of his foot, big nank, taps it down to Rioli, and a fantastic goal. That's Richmond. They just want to keep playing the game and attack it at all costs.
People are starting to talk Brownlow medals Brownlow medal as a possibility for a ruckman, Maxi Gawn, who dominated for Melbourne against Western Bulldogs. Just have a look at this sequence of clearances in the third quarter when the Demons just went nuts.
Well, it'd be like Richo when everyone wanted Richo to win the Brownlow. I think that'd be what it'd be like with Gawn. And I reckon he would had to have had 7 or 8 best on ground. So if they're feeding, he's winning all the awards.
Even that, Lord, the contest in the ruck was nullified there, but he went and cleared it himself.
But what about his commitment, though? A lot of blokes will just do what you have to do as an AFL footballer. But look at his body shape. He's made a huge commitment. He had a great year 2 years ago. Fell away last year and he said, I want to be the best ruckman in the game again, and he has been that.
Yeah, spot on. And he does those courageous things too. How many times did we see him go back in the hole, take the big marks? And a lot of ruckmen just do the centre bounce work, Lordy, but he makes his presence felt around the ground. You genuinely get the sense that he's the biggest man on the ground and uses his full size and advantage.
Someone who wasn't the biggest man on the ground on the weekend was Roy Sloane, but gee, didn't he galvanise his team and the 46 or 7 or whatever it was thousand in the crowd in this must-win game for the Crows, and doing it like this. I mean, it's a long bomb at a crucial stage of that game just to seal it.
Not many blokes in the game can have an impact like this, where the crowd, it just lifted the crowd, the teammates. When they showed the vision during the week that Don Pike announced Sloane signed on for 5 years, the players just erupted into raptures, and that's the impact he obviously has at the Adelaide Crows.
Some positive news for them. We all know they've had a tough year, and you could almost feel that from the crowd, that some relief as well as something really good to cheer about.
It was the best I'd seen him move to all year, Rory Sloane.
And taking himself away from that uncontracted list, it puts the onus now back on Gaff and with West Coast, and clubs are coming for him. Just watch this space on Hanbury. I know he's contracted officially for 3 more years beyond this year, but given now the midfielders are being taken out of the options for other clubs, he's going to be talked about, and already has been talked about. The Hawks, Lordo, was supposed to have the dream run into the finals. The draw they've now got on the back of losing to the Brisbane Lions for the second time this year doesn't look as good as it did maybe this time last week.
Yeah, I fell into the draw on the weekend thinking that they just waltzed down to Tassie, where they've won 24 of 26.
I think they thought that too.
Yeah, pencil out for a win, but the Brisbane Lions were underestimated. They're on a roll. I think the midfield of Hawthorn's the biggest concern, Jim. They're 18th for clearances. Tom Mitchell, O'Meara. Not much after that, and that's probably their biggest issue.
Well, spot on. The Lions have got them twice this year, and it's through that midfield depth and willing to take the game on. Young talent mixed with experienced talent. Zorko, Beams, who are just at the top of their game, which allows the likes of McCluggage, Berry, even Rayner, these sort of guys, just to find their feet. But what they're doing as the year's going on, they're getting confidence because they're being played in the key roles. And look, McCluggage was just all class. Louis Taylor, they've sort of, repositioned, got him taking the game forward a lot more, which I think that's more of his strength in getting those little ones down across half back.
And this here too, I mean, this was a quarter that Hawthorn was meant to dominate. It went the other way, and when the guy who's kicking this goal is the number 1 pick from last year, Cam Rayner, you know you're on song, don't you?
Well, they're relevant again, Damo. It's fantastic to see,
good.
and they're a buzz team, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Pre-game, they've introduced something that they're happy for us to see in the public. This ceremony almost around putting the jumpers on. Yeah,
poor Zorko in the back there can't get his big fat bonds over the jumper there, as he admitted, but. Lloydie, you've seen this before from other teams. I understand it's young Berry's idea because their first quarters have been poor, and since they've started doing this, it's almost like a commitment that we're all switched on together and we're going to start the game well. And I think they've been doing this the last 3 weeks, and they've won their last 3 first quarters, or something similar to that.
If they lost, everyone would say, what does it really mean? Yeah. But they're just trying to stand for something at the moment, the Brisbane.
There's a real spark. It's a genuine spark at that club at the moment, and well done to them, because I put my hand up. I've been very critical of them, but they seem to be on the right track. Jack Billings, after round 12, was going nowhere in 2018. You can see there, figures between rounds 1 and 11, got dropped for that round 12 game. Returned, though, in fine form.
No coincidence, Jim. His form has coincided with 3 wins in the last 4 weeks. for the St Kilda Footy Club.
I think we're a little bit too critical of this guy, obviously because of the draft pick, and it's always one of those draft picks who came after and how well they're going. Obviously, the Bont is always compared to him. But you go back to last year, he kicked 23 goals, 36. So he's had a lot of shot goals. You flip that around the other way, he's All-Australian squad contention for a small forward. He finished 5th in their best and fairest and polled 11 Brownlow votes. He's going pretty well for a guy that was drafted in 2013. I think we expect too much of him. If you go back to all the recruiters, they still would have taken him in that pick because he was probably the most skilled player. And we're starting to see that. He's just got to develop that consistency, that gap, as they say, from the very best to his worst games. If he closes that, he'd be super tough.
Love his response from being dropped too. Harry McKay, strange scenario. Carlton kept telling us he wasn't ready, and for selection integrity they weren't going to budge. And yet, out of nowhere, having not played the previous week in the VFL, he's back in. He can show some beautiful movement like this. And look, he doesn't look out of place. I don't think he ever has. In the 9 games he's played, he has not looked out of place on an AFL venue, Lauder.
I don't begrudge Carlton for what they've done. They know their player better than we do, and I just think sometimes some players can be thrown in straight away like a Rayner, but sometimes bigger players need to be treated with kid gloves a little bit.
Shouldn't they just be playing them all now at this stage, Lloyd? You find out about a few of them?
I think you can the last 5 or 6 rounds, but sometimes trying to play, like you see Brayshaw, he's out for 3 weeks now with groin soreness, so sometimes it can be too much for young players just building their bodies.
You going through the tapes last night of the crowd action in the North Sydney Swans game, Jimmy?
You know, I like to find little things in the game of footy here. It's not often that the kid has to rein in Dad, but Dad, he's just got a little bit too emotional. Dad, just settle down, you're embarrassing me. So when he goes to primary school tomorrow, he's going to have to explain that to all his mates. Look, Dad, what are you doing?
Aston has to rein you in at times.
Yeah, exactly right, when the cats are playing.
Jimmy and Matty, thank you. And thank you for watching us on the #1 website for footy in the country. We'll see you next week on Access All Areas. Goodbye.